Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. This is episode number, what is it now? 332. Okay, we're getting there.
That's a lot of episodes.
Yes, I'm your host, Don Irvine. This is my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning, everybody.
Brian and I we've been doing this so long. So once again, for those who haven't seen this before, this is 332 of this version, and this is probably at least our third iteration of this because we've been on different platforms and started way ago, probably 9 or 10 years ago when
You were in Bethesda.
Yeah, when we were doing
go to Bethesda to do it.
Yeah, so we've gone through a lot, and so we probably
I got stuck on the elevator one time leaving there. I was with Spencer. And the elevator door closes, and Spencer's like, "It's fine." And I'm like, "It's not fine." And I was sitting there, I pulled the door apart, and then it opened up. Like, stuck my head in there and just. Spencer's like, "Wow."
More memories.
But I was a calm and cool and cheerful person. If you're going to be stuck on an elevator, that's probably your guy, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
You really could talk to Spencer for a long time, and it would, while you're
true.
waiting on the.
That's true. Repair. I mean, one of those things too is that. Remember how long ago was it when we had that, that earthquake that rattled some things, and so the office we had then was, on Connecticut Avenue. So that was pre 2013. So I don't even know what year that was exactly, but. Anyway, apparently Spencer was in the bathroom in the earthquake and our building. I wasn't in the building. I don't know. I must have been away on a trip or something like that. Didn't bother him.
I'm sitting there eating with my kids.
It's not like he ran out of the bathroom screaming.
Yeah. Me and my kids were eating when that happened, and like the chandelier starts swinging around. They're like, "Should we be worried?" I'm like, "I don't know."
Isn't that a weird feeling though? I mean, if you're here on the East Coast, and Spencer was raised, in what we deemed to feel ourselves was kind of a earthquake-free zone. Yeah. But this one was large enough that it made its way, even into DC and in other places. I guess into Virginia too. So it's kind of like, all right, what is this? We're not used to this. I mean, if we're in California, it's kind of like, all right, what level are we at? And if you're in the heart of DC or the outskirts of DC like that, or in Virginia, you're like, wait a minute.
I'm gonna tell you, like I was in one in California that was like almost a 6, I think 5.8 or whatever, which is not terribly tiny, but not terribly large either. And I mean, there's nothing like the helplessness of being in an earthquake. I mean, that's unbelievable. You wait till it ends. You got no power to do anything.
And I'm pretty sure when Spencer was in California for a couple of years on his church mission, I'm pretty sure he experienced, at least one earthquake, if not more, during that time. So he'd already gotten to feel kind of the California, that quake, and then he had our quake, but so probably that's why he was kind of like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm not going anywhere.
I'm busy.
So anyway, so we've so the weather has been, I don't know. I mean, it was interesting, because we talk a lot about the weather on the show, and all the things that happen. But we have had a very hot, sticky summer, and the Journal ran an article within the last week or so, referring to kind of a stickiness index that has been and so this is pretty much for the Eastern Seaboard, I guess. DC and I guess New York. It's been like the stickiest summer since like 1933. So we're not like going out and having like 100-degree days on a regular basis, but the humidity has been there, and so you go out, the air's heavy a lot of days. The last few days have been better. I mean, we've got some cooler nights, still a little humid at times. But I've been able to actually go out and walk in the evening and feel okay. that's not bad. I mean, I don't immediately say stop after 5 minutes and stuff like that. So,
Well,
maybe
we're sort of on the outer bands of this hurricane now.
right.
It's been cloudy and sticky. It's a little breeze, so it's not as bad as it could be. But the temperatures here only in the 70s down south. So what happens is here, August is generally a reasonable month weather-wise, right? It's warm, but it's not piping hot, right? Which is pretty much what we've had so far. But like Shreveport, I think it was 104 yesterday. What happens there is, it's the same as here. It's like humidity keeps the temperature from going too high or too low. It keeps it in the middle, right? But down there, it burns off the humidity. So when we get to August, the humidity does not stand up to the heat anymore, and the heat itself actually climbs. So August is generally the coolest summer month here and the warmest summer month there, and they're really getting pounded. That whole part of the country is intense heat. Now, north of them, and most of the rest of the country is under a pretty cool dome of air, and has been for a while, and will be. Looks like for at least another 2 weeks. The people who predict these things around here say that we're pretty much done with the heat of summer. It's like it's over. It's August 20th, whatever we are, 20th, right?
That'd be fine by me. I mean, I have to give a shout out to my wife, because as much as I hated to kind of give up the lawn mowing chores, because I actually I would time it, figure out, take a cool part of the morning or whatever and do that. But we really hadn't had that here, and we had a lot of rain this year, as we had discussed before too. So going ahead and paying a lawn guy to do the lawn, I kept thinking, it's like, yeah, that was the best thing. I can't, I can't take that kind of heat and humidity on the, for 45 minutes to an hour out there cutting the grass. So, yeah, go ahead and pay the guy, and do that. And that was the decision that I didn't want to have. And I'm like, oh, but it's worked out really good, because now I'm just like, all right, I just text the guy, say, come and cut my grass.
One of the features that we looked for when we were looking to move, and we moved here, was we're not responsible for anything 1 inch outside the door. No shoveling, no mowing, no nothing.
I know, there are pros and cons about the whole home ownership and everything else along the way. It's just because you're constantly in a state of maintenance. There's always something.
That's right.
Eventually, right?
Those costs aren't predictable.
Right. And
I know what I got to pay these guys every month,
Right.
But those costs are like, you're fine, here's $3,000. You're fine, here's $500.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we
there's advantages both ways,
Right. I mean, we've been, this house was built, my house was built in 2000, 2001 or something like that. Anyway, we were the second owner, took it over pretty early in 2004. In terms of it only been like, it was only 3 or 4 years old. But now you are at that point where stuff needs to be replaced. More stuff needs to be replaced.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago we replaced 2 of the toilets, but I upgraded the toilets, and it's like, okay, I'm happy with that. It costs a bit of money, but and I spent more than I probably had to, but that's it. That's the last time those toilets will ever have to be replaced.
Right.
Or just basic maintenance. Got to get on a ladder and got to change the air filters, and stuff like that.
Right.
It just happens. I've got a driveway that hasn't been, that's still the original driveway, and had bids on the driveway, and it's about $7,000. And I'm sitting here. And this is to basically redo the entire driveway. Which is, I could seal it again for like $300 or $200 something, but it's not going to solve. I mean, it's just going to continue to get worse. So, and worse, because cracks develop. They don't, you can seal them, but they're coming back.
Right.
So, I've noticed more and more of the people in the neighborhood have done that, where they've replaced the driveway. And I'm like, okay, I may have to bite the bullet, here and do that. We still have one original air conditioner out of the 2 that we have. So that's good, but I keep waiting for that other shoe to drop. So this is one thing, these things will happen. A furnace,
Right.
water heater, all those things that will eventually be homeowners' expenses. So anyway, it's great to have a home, but you have to remember there are responsibilities and there are going to be expenses,
Yeah.
including property taxes that don't go down,
Right. Especially where you are.
especially in Maryland. All right, enough of that. Okay, so the big news: President Trump met with Vlad in Alaska, and had a meeting on, what was it, Friday. Uh, they did not get a peace agreement. Not that I don't think anybody thought they could get a peace agreement in that one day. Uh, you know, I don't know whether or not how much Trump got out of that himself, except it looks like he's setting up for a trilateral meeting and trying to get Zelenskyy in there, and they really need to hammer some things out. Putin seems to wants territory. Zelenskyy
Well,
wants
he has
security.
territory.
Yeah, well, he wants that.
I
He
keep
wants
reading
that.
these people. They try to say, we're not going to give Putin any land. It's like, well, Putin got the land, so there's no give. Give is over. That's already occurred.
Yeah, well, Zelenskyy doesn't want to give up the land because it shrinks the country, but also makes it less secure. It's like you just become more of a target. I mean, okay, so we agreed to do that. Are we going to agree to not go back again and grab the rest of it? Maybe not. And they break those agreements all the time anyway. So.
Right. So, that's true. Okay. So, what's going on is, he went to Alaska. I think Trump was hoping that he could negotiate a quick ceasefire while the other things are getting hammered out, right? And they didn't go for that. I don't think either side was ready to actually do that. So he pivoted to working on a more permanent agreement, and he got like, what will it take to make this happen? He went back and told the Europeans and NATO and all those guys who came to Washington and came on, Trump said, hey, be here Monday. And they said, okay, we're here Monday. Right. And it's like, someone posted yesterday, look how bored Macron looks, like he did, and I'm like, okay, he might be bored. Right. But think about that. If this meeting gets held, you get invited, you cannot not go. Right. You have to go. So you have to be thankful that you're one of the people that got invited. I mean, they don't have to invite him. They didn't invite the leader of Spain, right? So there were people who did not get invited who were could be seen as stakeholders. So Trump invited these people there. They came. They all got on the same page. They're sitting in the Oval Office, and he's like, they're like staffers lined up around the desk. The heads of state of 9 countries, plus the head of NATO, plus the head of the EU, are just sitting there taking notes from Trump on what's going to happen next, right? So, they now have a program that, they can start on towards getting this worked out, right? And, of course, the left has various problems with it that don't really add up to anything. But the fact of the business is no one came close to this. No one has done anything like this. No one has gotten nearly this far on talking about actually ending this war, and all of a sudden you have 2 summits in 3 days, and you have everybody's got an action plan, and we're all off working on that. So Putin's going to throw some flies in the ointment. He's going to make this difficult. Trump has leverage on Putin, but he's hesitant to use it because, if you use it and it doesn't work, then you have to escalate. And if you escalate, at the end of escalation is nuclear war, right? The 2 leading nuclear powers in the world. So the idea is to extract the concessions without getting to nuclear war. So what will this look like? My guess is the Donbass region becomes part of Russia. The borders armed to the teeth to make sure that he does not try to expand. How long will the world's attention stay on this sufficiently to protect Ukraine? That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it's hard to imagine that, Putin is going to really give up much of what he's captured.
Right. He's not. I mean, he may do some things that are, yeah. Right. That's right. Right. So yeah, anything Ukraine controls, but so you're basically, Bob, saying lock in the current lines, which is what we've been saying on this show for 2 years now, right? The lines haven't really changed. I guess the Russians have made a few breakthroughs here lately, but they're not, they're not going all the way to Kyiv. They're not doing things they could do, right? They seem to be only interested for now in those, the Russia adjacent parts of Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, I really hate to see Putin, basically be able to expand like this, because there's, he went in there under false pretenses to begin with, and then he's going to come away with more territory. But the fact of the matter, I mean, Ukraine, there's not much Ukraine can do about this. I mean,
right.
I think they
all ears for anybody got a plan to fix it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
We need to do better. Let's go. But I haven't heard better or even comparable.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't resolve this, I think both sides know this, is that all that'll happen is that they just keep lobbing drones and whatever at each other. They keep killing people, innocent civilians as well as combatants, and it just slogs on. We're already in a long slog. I mean, and it's
right.
And so something needs to be done, and I think Trump has been he's received praise, or even faint praise, I guess, from liberals who are just like, well, we didn't see this from Joe Biden
right.
at all, right? We didn't see any movement from the Biden administration to really take the bull by horns and try to do something about this, and I don't know.
Most of them they're hung up on the red carpet and the handshake and Trump clapping and a bunch of ephemeral nonsense that adds up to nothing.
Yeah. I mean, that's been kind of the narrative, is that we laid out the red carpet and did all this, and as if we were just kissing Putin's rear end on this. But there's a method to Trump's version of diplomacy and how he does things, and
that's right.
If it means giving that kind of scenario where you treat him well, but then you, in the discussions that people aren't privy to, the rest of the media aren't privy to, that you start talking about hardline issues that are not as pomp and circumstance as what he was when he first walked off the plane, then that's it. I mean, that all that stuff that the news media captures like that, I don't really care about that. That is, they make that for the media or for whatever, because they want to, the real nitty gritty.
Yeah, the other thing is like, we've talked about this before too. So they don't really know what happened in Alaska, right? They went into rooms, they shut doors, the media wasn't in there. There were no questions. They didn't take any questions after. They both just came out and said, it was a productive meeting. We'll keep meeting, blah, blah, blah. So they don't have a story, right? They don't know what happened. They don't know how far it got, so it's like the Trump officials looked ashen faced as they left the room. They looked like something got said in there that really scared them. That's your story, right? You don't have a story. You have the carpet and the handshake, and he got to ride in the limo, and all Trump wanted out of this meeting was that secret moment in the limo where he could actually talk to Putin without anybody hearing. It's like, you're trying, you're reaching, you're not there.
Yeah, well, heaven forbid that the media actually just say, they met. We don't know what happened behind closed doors. If we learn more, we'll tell you. Rather than just kind of go with that, they need to kind of hypothesize and try to create a scenario for people to say, this is what we think happened. This is how they looked, right? We're going on body language and all of these things.
Our interpretation of body language.
Right.
That's what, our completely, neutral toward Trump
Yeah,
interpretation of Biden.
we're completely unbiased on this whole issue. Okay, take our word for it.
Yeah, the bias has really been exposed in this. It's just
Yeah.
really, and like you read the Washington Post, and it's like the stories are written like Trump, was fooled again by Putin. And it's like they haven't agreed to anything. Well, he got his meeting and his photo. Well, do you really think that Putin cares about having a photo with Trump? I mean, the Kim, North Korea, okay, yeah, that's a propaganda boost to him. But I mean, there's no threat to his power, so it really doesn't matter there either. But this guy, he's not the head of Botswana. He's the head of Russia, right? He doesn't care about photo ops. Like, oh, now I can say I was with Trump and everyone will be impressed with me. And it's like, he doesn't think like that, and I think, the more shrill the attacks get, the more they discredit themselves.
Yeah, if there's anybody out there from Botswana, my apologies.
Yeah. No offense, Botswana.
No offense to Botswana, at least for this purpose. But and you mentioned earlier too. I mean, we had the EU leaders that came in, the specially invited EU leaders, and they did show up, and and so that was, I think that's good for Zelenskyy too, because they and for Trump. I mean, it had been seen that Trump has been, not as concerned about Ukraine or Zelensky's position, but he obviously was saying, "Hey, look, NATO. Here's some of you. You guys are EU, NATO. We want to have a discussion, as you said. Let's get on the same page, and so we know where we're going with this. So we know when we go back to the negotiating table, if we do get this trilat, that we have your support." That this, everybody's going to be okay with it. I mean, look, if you're Finland, you're concerned about this, right?
Yeah,
you
right.
share 830 miles of border with Russia. You are concerned with the fact that you don't know what the heck Russia's going to do. So
right.
you want to keep an eye on that. That the Finnish president, I mean, I didn't realize, interesting guy. I mean, he was educated here.
Yeah. He talks very American. You hear him talk. He's like, okay, yeah, that guy's been here. Yeah, but but the other thing is like, if you're Putin, what do you now see, right? Because before you saw them bickering with Trump and Trump trying to make them give 5% of GDP to defense, and so now you see a trade deal where they all agreed to buy a bunch of American weaponry, give it to give it to Ukraine to fight Russia with, and now they're all sitting in that room making the plan together, right? Sitting there listening to Trump say what they needed to do, right? And so now when Trump and Zelenskyy walk into those rooms with Putin, it's like Putin has to understand that all of Europe is publicly, fully, enthusiastically behind him, right? You're not just fighting Ukraine anymore. You're fighting all of us. So what are we all ready to do? Well, that remains to be seen. But your enemy has changed, right? And the whole world is willing to turn down the screws on you now if you don't figure out a way out of this. So right. Trump, you can say, well, Alaska was a failure. Washington D.C. wasn't a failure. That was a massive success. Might not have happened if Alaska hadn't turned out the way it did.
Yeah, and the fact remains too is just that there's going to be, as you said, there's going to be the support. So Zelensky's not isolated. He has the support. These NATO countries, they may not commit for reasons that we probably pretty well know about putting boots on the ground yet. That's kind of the next step that they don't want to make. But on the other hand, this is a pretty good show of force. They have shown up in person. They're sitting there all in the same room. Yeah, if I'm Putin, I'm thinking about what my next step is and how we're going to deal with negotiations along that.
Yeah.
And Bob's got a long comment here.
Right, that's true. That's right.
Yeah, I think that's true. That. I mean, yeah. I mean, yeah,
I take him seriously now, and that if you look at the quotes of there, it's like, yeah, he sincerely wants peace. You know, I've even heard, like you say, I've heard some leftists say, you know, it appears, you know, that Trump just really hates wars, and he will go around the world, you know, stopping wars, you know, for no reason other than he hates war. So, you know, you can get yourself over a barrel. You know, you get too strong feelings about something like that, but that's the facts.
Yeah, and we've seen the same kind of thing in a way with the whole Israel, Gaza Palestinian thing, Hamas thing, because he's I think he's visibly upset with the fact that he can't, that can't get, Hamas can't broker a deal here, and he's really lost his patience. I mean, we already saw. I mean, he gave Putin a lot of rope, and then started then publicly saying, I don't know what's going on here. It's like, I thought we had this or whatever. It's like, but he seems to be changing. So Trump has dropped things where he's publicly criticizing the other side, like, look, you guys kind of talk about wanting to end these wars, but you're not serious. I was willing to listen to you, but let's move on. Let's actually make this happen. You keep stringing us all along here, and people keep dying. This is not acceptable anymore. And the situation in Israel, it doesn't get any better. I mean, it's at this point in time, there's so much finger pointing going on. I mean, it's tough for Netanyahu, but I think, like, he has to continue to stand his ground, and remind people who started this thing, and that Hamas in existence means they will continue to come after for the extinction of all Jews in Israel. So you need to eradicate them, and that's why he has to remain firm, despite what other people. The sentiment has been changed on the ground, but this is kind of media influence and a lot of other things have done this. Is like, you try being the prime minister in Israel and see what you can do. I mean,
yeah. So, I guess Egypt has put forth some kind of peace plan.
Right.
And it's, we let out a few hostages. We negotiate some more. Things are going well. We maybe let out a few more hostages. I don't know how many hostages they have who are alive or who could survive if they were returned, right? Because some of the people they have, they're so bad off that even if you get them back, they're probably not going to make it. But the idea, you're still two-tiering the release of hostages at this point. I say eradicate these people. Make this end. Like, no more Hamas. Your goal is not to come to a peace understanding with Hamas. Your goal should be to eliminate it, because they're not going to play fair. And like you say, there's no resolving this. So you have these countries, who are right back to coming out. And we were going to do it too. United States was going to do it too, for the two-state solution. There was never going to be a two-state solution. They had a bunch of chances at that, and they turned it. The Palestinians turned it down, because you have to recognize Israel's right to exist, and that's not what they want to do. What they want to do is, from the river to the sea, kill every Jew and eliminate Israel. Right? That's what they want to do. Their goals have not changed and will not change. So the idea that you're going to live side by side with someone who, their immediate goal on day one is to kill every person in your country and drive them off the land, that's not going to happen. We're not going to let that happen. Israel is certainly not going to let that happen.
Yeah, I'm a little, we do see people who are kind of like, they're complaining that, we want Israel to, to end this. We want these hostages back, dead or alive. Don't you think, Israel, that's what they have been doing since day one, is trying to get these people back, and trying to get them back alive. And it's not Israel, that's dragging their feet. It's Hamas has been using this, and they have just, they release some people.
They release a few, they bob and weave, they try to keep it going. But it's like, you're not a negotiating partner anymore. You're somebody we're gonna exterminate.
Right. There's another.
That's right.
Armenia, Azerbaijan, right.
Yeah. Yeah, there's 7 of them that he's done.
Yeah, I mean, there are all these hot spots that have popped up, and luckily a lot of these have been, have not boiled over into major conflicts. We've been able to kind of snuff those out for the most part before they got worse. But that's sometimes you need you start beginning to need a scorecard at some point when these things start popping up. But I think Trump has shown he's no nonsense, and he's gone in there and they have done a remarkable job of taking care of a lot of things. These two conflicts seem to be, they are resolvable, but they're also in a way they're also somewhat intractable. But we're at least with the whole Ukraine thing, we're moving in the right direction.
Right.
And as a result, I mean, you even have liberal Democrats that say if he ends this war, I would nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, Hillary. So she says this, but she says he ends this war with no land concessions. Right. So, I mean, there's going to be some land concessions because, there's no way to drive them off the land. She knew what she was doing.
Yeah.
She's never going to nominate Trump for the.
Right. No. But I mean, I just the fact that they even mentioned that they would do this, whether or not there's strings attached, she didn't have to go out there and do it unless she's, just trying to troll Trump or trying to also say, hey, remember me?
Right, which is really what she's doing. Yeah, she has some faint hope that 2028 they will say, well, we're turning to Hillary one last time.
Ow.
Yeah. It won't happen. But you say that, but it's like, who's their candidate?
That's the problem.
The leaders in the clubhouse now, it's Harris, Buttigieg, Newsom. Right. And, no one looks at any of us sees a president. Huh? AOC. Yeah, she'll be eligible this time. That's right. She'll be over 35.
Yeah. It's just like, it's if you're a Democrat and you're honest, you're still thinking like, what are we going to do in 2028? I mean, we just right now it's still pretty bleak. I mean, it's still a ways off. Okay. I mean, we're in,
it is. It's a ways off.
We don't have an election for another 3+ years. Something could develop, but it's just with elections, these candidates need to kind of come out and start setting a base and getting things plotted early. So, if we get to 2026 and they're still muddled like this, then it becomes an even bigger problem because the runway becomes shorter. It takes a lot of effort to kind of lay your stake and claim to run for president, kind of strategize about your primaries and whatnot.
And line up the money,
Right.
That's the thing about it is, they're not going to give the money to Harris anymore. She's done as a candidate because she doesn't have the support. And yeah. I think that I would not worry about winning the Nobel Peace Prize. If it happens, it happens. But that's going to be their last stand, right? Their last marker in the sand is the Nobel. They're not going to,
Yeah, I mean,
we all know what happened,
Right, and Trump knows that the chances of doing this are very slim because of what Bob just cited in terms of, you've got this. It's all left-leaning policies and stances and whatnot.
A lot of people would have to hold their nose, and then
they would have to do it. I don't see it happening, but I
feel bad for the person who does win it, because whoever wins it, they're going to say it should have been Trump.
Yeah,
I mean, your reward is going to be diminished, whoever it is.
And I mean, compared to some of the other Peace Prize winners in the recent years, it's like, okay, don't you think Trump's accomplishments is that how he's doing it? I mean, if he does end the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and if somehow we get to a resolution on Israel and Hamas, I don't know how you stand in the way of that, but as I think Bob's saying, irrespective of that, from a world event standpoint, he's done a heck of a lot.
Yeah.
He's done more than certain other people that have won. So it's like, yeah, like you said, yeah, Trump should have won. So the other side of me says, if Trump wins, we'll never hear the end of it.
That could well be true too. You know,
He'll,
but
you know,
I don't know. I mean, I think you get to a point when
his family will make little souvenir Nobel Peace Prizes to sell with in gold leaf.
you know, it would be a big deal, right? And he would make a big deal out of it. And that, which is why I think the Democrats will somehow pull it out of the fire and not let him get convince him.
I mean, the resistance, they'll find everything they can to make sure that he doesn't get it, because it's just, no one, they'll hear no end of it. It'll be misery for the liberals. Just so many things that, but on, on a straight basis, he would deserve it for a lot of things that he's already done. I mean, that's what the hard part is for the other side, is that the fact that he's actually had some accomplishments, and I'm not the rabid Trump supporter says that everything he's done domestically and whatever has been the right thing. But overall, when you say, like, look, it's a peace prize. So if you're talking about just brokering peace, or keeping things, that, I think, you can kind of check that box off. For how he's been able to handle most of these things. So anyway, all right, we need to move on here. I just need to mention, we need to talk just a little bit about Elon Musk. So Elon Musk, this whole supposed big fallout with Trump, that the media hype, they were all getting excited about it, right? So he's going to go and start a third party and put all his money that way. And now the Wall Street Journal reports that he's put the brakes on that, and he's looking at supporting Vance potentially in 2028. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, you kind of, it's completely unsurprising, right? Those are two. It was, when all that was happening, when Musk was, at the White House every day working on Doge stuff, and I was like, okay, this is not going to last forever. These are two alphas, and a lot of being one of the president's helpers, right? Whatever your position officially is you sit around so you can be in photos with him getting all the glory, right? Well, what other aspect of Elon Musk's life does he stand in the background for photo ops for other people? None, right? He's every other format he's ever in his life, he's in charge, right? All these companies he runs, all these boards he's on and everything, he's in charge. So, to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to sit there and sublimate my ego and nod along at all Trump's photo ops for 4 years, that was always unreasonable, right? And it's not really even the best use of Elon. Okay, so what's happening now is he's going out and lining up all the tech bros to support Vance. Vance is going to start with a huge money advantage. The Democrats are broke and getting broker. The voter, the other thing is that, I think the New York Times reported the last day or so, maybe today, that which another thing we've been talking about on this show for a long time is,
which you have brought up,
the voter registration. Is their figures were beyond what I thought it was. They said the Republicans now have a 4.5 million advantage in voter registration, and that it's grown by, which would mean, because it was about 2 million at the election, last November. That means it's grown 2.5 million since November. So if you think about that, that's a lot of momentum. And it doesn't, at that point, if you're, and the people who do this, they say, okay, you can tell a pollster or something, right? That's no effort, right? And a lot of people don't want to be seen saying they're pro-Trump, right? They think there's some kind of social stigma that goes with it or whatever. But voter registration requires action. You got to go, you may have to go do it online or go downtown and go to the voter registration thing. But that's effort that people actually go to express their political leanings, between elections. So it's a very good read. And it's like, people are not, you didn't shift, 4.5 million voter advantage for people who are going to not vote for Republicans. I mean, they're changing into that party. It's because they are going to vote Republican in the midterms, and I think Charlie Cook has it up to like 215 Republican districts are absolute locks. And there's like 19 or 20 that they can't say for sure. So Democrats right now to win would have to run the board of that. They would have to get all those, virtually every one of those to win it, which, the momentum does not say they're going to do that. Plus it looks like, Texas is going to add its 5 seats and California is not, right? Because it requires they just passed a constitutional amendment to do it with an independent commission. And now, the governor's saying, forget set aside the independent commission. We just convince you to back so that you could, we can do this one time to fight off Trump. California is there, the sense I get of it is they're increasingly disinterested in fighting off Trump. They're not ready to get on the bandwagon yet. But, the idea that we're going to exist on this planet to oppose Trump, I think the time for that one has come and gone.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see these numbers as they're appearing there that, if you're Democrats. So I don't know if the Wall Street Journal had mentioned this, several days ago about, when talking about the Texas redistricting fight and saying that the real, the real nightmare for the Democrats was the fact of how the population was shifting, right? And we've been seeing this, California continues to lose population, Illinois continues to lose, New York was losing, so that heavily, Democrat states where they have gerrymandered, things, that way, they will continue to lose, seats to red states. Right. So that, so the Democrats are going to continue to lose this, and look, I mean, okay, so like I said before, I'm not crazy about this maneuver by the Republicans in Texas, but, they're going to do it. So they're going to do it, and there's no guarantee that they, after the next election cycle or whatever, that they lock these districts in as Republicans going forward if they've taken like an R+15 and made it an R+5 or something like that, if they start making some districts more competitive in order to create more Republican districts. But, in California, it's what's the ratio? It's 43-9.
Yeah.
So, once again, you have
the
these
voters
states,
are at least 40% are at this point.
Yeah, and
that's not 40%.
so Newsom's proposal would go make it 48-4. So.
But he says that. But the thing about it is like what you just said about Texas is more true about California. They've already gerrymandered the heck out of California, and any more gerrymandering they do, you may strengthen one. You may, you can knock out Valadio and the Central Valley or whatever. But you weaken all the districts around that, and you create districts that are not now competitive. The Democrats win easily will suddenly become competitive because you don't have that many voters anymore, especially since they've taken almost 2 million off the voter rolls there for shouldn't have been on the voter rolls, or they're either illegal or don't live there anymore or whatever. So. Their corruption margin of error is drying up too. So you're going to have to actually win the votes now, and their time is running out.
Well, and they have a jungle primary, which is kind of another wild card for them too. With this is that they've had. I think that's one of the reasons they've had. It takes. They're not. California is not solving the problem in California in terms of. One of the things, to me, one of the biggest problems in California is that it takes them forever to count their votes.
Yeah.
Right. We're every time we sit here and because we've done this numerous times now, through these midterms and everything else, while we wait for the House results, to see the balance of power, particularly where it's been close. It's like we have to wait, like you said, months because they can't figure this out. And it's like virtually every other state in the nation. Yeah, well,
it ain't a matter of figuring it out.
Virtually every other state in the nation can get this done pretty quickly. So that's why it leads to a lot of things like, is there some chicanery going on and some other things? California's got some problems.
Trust in the result.
Yeah, right, and and they're razor thin margins.
Yeah, and especially when it's like the Republicans ahead, and with each new recount, the Democrat catches up. So finally, in the last count, the Democrat pulls 4 votes ahead and the Democrat wins. right?
Yeah.
When that's the way it unfolds, right? That leaves a lot of questions among voters. Like, was this done fairly?
Yeah. So, but I did see. I guess CNN here something had a poll that all this at least is for now has boosted Newsom's polling in the presidential sweepstakes for the Democrats. Because I mean he's making a lot of noise, but I
He's
mean
making a lot of noise, and he's the only one really making noise.
yeah. Well, and the stumbling block for Newsom too, obviously, is that he's got to take this to the voters to have them pass this, which is like, oh yeah,
And it's
okay, just like
28 points underwater.
yeah,
Because the
okay,
voters they're like, they're like, hey, you told us to do this fair and partial way, and now you're saying, oh, we can't do fair and partial because of Texas,
yeah, right. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's like
the other thing about Newsom is, the Democrats are there, high fiving him now, but what is he doing? What's his noise that he's making? He's imitating Trump's tweets. He's imitating Trump, trying to imitate Trump with this. His whole thing is imitate Trump. Well, why would you elect the knockoff when you have the original?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just, you can't get there like this.
So just, also with this, since Texas is probably going to pass their thing, so the time on the special session ran out on Friday. Governor Abbott called a new session. Most of the Democrats have returned, so there is a quorum present. There's a bunch of other
weirdo who won't leave the chamber.
Yeah, right. Won't leave the chamber. There's some things like that and going on, and they've said, well, I think we've kind of made our point about how unconstitutional this is, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, Obama praised these legislators for standing up. We also had Kamala. She dropped by. What was it? The Teamsters National Black Caucus Conference. I didn't even know there was such a thing. Okay, and she says we're going to take it to the voters. Take it to the streets. Take it to the people. Yeah. It's time we fight fire with fire.
Well, right. And that's one of my things is like, as long as their political statement is we're going to fight Trump, they're not going to win.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Trump obviously got more votes than anti-Trump. Right. And he was 52% in the Rasmussen overnights last night. So he's not collapsed. Jim Carville was wrong. He did not collapse in 30 days. In fact, he's getting stronger, right? So just saying your only thing on earth is to fight Trump is not going to feed the bulldog anymore. You're going to have to actually have a political program. You actually have an idea or two that people look at and say, yeah, that would work. That would help my life. Meanwhile, Trump is cutting taxes. Putting police on the streets of DC. DC restaurants are up 30% since Trump, made the streets of DC safe or whatever. It's remarkable. And it just hear them fight against law and order. We don't want law and order. We don't want, those neighborhoods to be safe. Like, not like this. Not if Trump gets credit for it, And it's just, the world has heard that, and they don't care anymore.
Yeah, and people have to understand too, with the National Guard, I mean, they were not weaponized. I mean, National Guard will do a lot of duties. They can do a lot of desk work and stuff like that. They don't have arrest powers. They can call the DC police to come and make an arrest if they find something. I mean, I heard, I guess there was a report that they will get some tasers, which would probably be fine with me. Yeah. Something to protect themselves just in case. But but
you have presence. That the law is going to be enforced, and that makes all the difference. It's like those criminals, they prey on the fact that the cops are not really going to aggressively enforce the law, right? And now you have, if I screw up, they will get on me, and they might not arrest you, but they will tackle you and they'll hold you till the next vote. The people who can't arrest you get there.
Yeah, and and Mayor Bowser talks about we need more police. Well, then you can.
Why are you mad about this?
Yeah, right. Look, if you really need more police, you can find a way to add some more officers if you really want to, because every single government has got a bunch of spending that is just nonsense.
Right. So they have, the Democrats clap back on this as they say, well, you cut $1 billion from their budget. You didn't have to take that out of the police. That was a choice you made, right? Because of your whole posture toward police and law enforcement and keeping the streets clean, right? That's why you did that. You didn't do it because, you didn't shed cops because, oh, we just couldn't afford it. Because there's all kind of stuff you're affording that you didn't have to afford. So, the roost, chickens are coming home to roost.
You established until recently a Black Lives Matter plaza. Okay.
Right. That's right. And you had to go
nuts.
paint over all that.
Right. This was nuts.
Quit doing dumb stuff like that. And with government, really, its only function is supposed to be to keep us safe. So you abdicate that, then become, an activist, and you want to generate a bunch of other stuff. No, do the things you're supposed to do. Let it grow from there.
All right, let's get to the last few minutes here. MSNBC going to rename itself to MS Now. Now, this is part of this is that because MSNBC is being split off from the parent corporation. They're not going to be able to use the NBC logo, so they've got to create their own logo. CNBC, which is actually Consumer News and Business Channel, and is not NBC per se, is also going to create a separate, a new logo, but they'll still be around. But so now it'll be MS Now. It's still kind of interesting to me because they really have no relationship with Microsoft. I mean, that's how it began in like 1996. Right. And they haven't had a Microsoft relationship for a long time, but they have kept the name there. But the name changes. When this split off is actually somewhat of a risk in the sense that, for the long-term, survivability of now the new MS Now going forward, a few months hence, because they won't have the deeper pockets of the corporate. They are now, they're now called Versant. They're going to have to fend for themselves. Maybe somebody might gobble them up or whatever, but I could see that, with trends being that fewer people watching cable news, people don't really like the outright liberal bias of this kind of thing. They don't have the protection of NBC, that you're going to see that, potential, staff cutbacks and other things like that, that will happen because it's like, well, we can't afford to pay this host this money anymore, so we're going to part company. So you may start seeing a very different network, as once things kind of settle down and they figure out, do we have any money? Do advertisers going to continue to support us? I don't know.
Right, I don't either, because I don't either, and and cutting them loose from NBC won't make them any more radical than they already are. Right. It's not like they can do anything that really kind of improves their standing with the audience. Right. They just kind of try to keep being them, I guess, and hope that enough people follow them over or whatever. But, all of cable is cable news is a dying enterprise. It's a dying enterprise across all of those formats. People get information elsewhere, and they're viewed as dramatique, right? Dramatic. Everybody's incredibly mad about all this stuff and whatever. So, CNN's had a little success with the discussion shows, right? Where the arguments themselves can go viral and whatnot. But MSDNC, their thing is to hammer the right. They have there's no way for the right to get in a word edgewise. It's like on this network, we hammer the right every single day in every way. And, there's always going to be an audience for that. It's dwindling and it's getting very old, right? But, old is good for TV. Old helps TV. It's like, for instance, the Miami Marlins, right? They have a very tiny, not many people go to the games there, even though they have a nice indoor stadium down there in Miami, but they have some of the best TV ratings in Major League Baseball because all these old people watch them, right? Same with Tampa. All these retirees in Florida, they watch these ball games. So, there's a crowd for old and people who don't move over to original thinking. So, and I think that's what they will settle on. Now, how long will it last? I don't know. And how shrill can you be and hold your audience? I don't know. But they, Trump is keeping them in business right now, and they can depend on him till at least 2028, perhaps beyond.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. All right. So, we've talked before about how, the Trump administration has cut back the budgets of NPR. So I noticed today, I they did a story, thanks to some other thing I saw, on one of my favorite events, which is tractor pulls. Okay. NPR was covering a tractor pull. I love tractor pulls. I haven't gone to one in a long time.
I've covered them, and I don't get the attraction.
I don't know. I just think it's hilarious because I never know what's going to be in there, because the one I was at one in Montgomery County decades ago with some friends of mine. They took me to one of these things, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. It's like they're hooking up like these Mercedes jet engines that try to do all these, I mean, it's just bizarre, weird, you never know what they're going to do to try to win this tractor pull. So I thought, this is kind of just America, whatever.
Yeah, it is America. It
right.
Really
so it's kind of fun. So, but what I thought was interesting was this, so they're now that they're short of funds, and they had to mention President Trump here. Devastating decision means fewer reporters on the ground, fewer voices that dare to ask difficult questions, and depths of diversity.
We have plenty of asking difficult questions. We don't need any more.
Well, I mean, I think we talked before about this. It's like, exactly what were they doing anyway? I mean, as a news source, right? I mean, where were they when they were more interested in, being, just covering liberal politics and being a liberal
being hyper leftist, and they were warned, right? The Uri Berliner was a essay last year, right? He'd been like May of last year. He puts out this essay that says, all 83 people who work at NPR in Washington are Democrats. Their shows, their programming is moving so far to the left that they're leaving the audience behind, right? Usually, it's always been somewhat left, but you could hear enough interesting stuff to where you tolerate the leftism because you get some other good programming. But now you're to the point where they're not. And, there was a congressional hearing after that to ask them about it. And their thing was, we're fine. We don't need any of your advice or Early Berliner's advice either. That's why we fired him. So, then it comes back, you get a Republican Congress, and, they went for it and they got it. And it's completely defunded right now. They've defunded, and even the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which doles out the funds, is going to shut down in the next few months.
Yeah.
They just have a skeleton staff there to close it down in an orderly way. There's already talk on Capitol Hill of restoring some of that funding, but I think that's a dead letter. I don't see how you get that passed through both houses of Congress to restore funding for it. There was a story yesterday that the Knight Foundation and some of those guys, top leftist NGOs, are going to throw in some money to make up the shortfall, which, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, look, they have a right to exist. We just don't want to see taxpayer money funding this.
Right. You should not be forced to fund political views that you do not agree with.
Right. So, so go ahead and fund it. But, one of the things that always bothered me in college was, we always had a mandatory fee in our tuition for the Student Government Association. And it's like, okay, so I supposedly have a voice at the SGA, but I really, I never attended any meetings because they always held them at, when I was not on campus or whatever. But University of Maryland was run by a bunch of liberals that just pushed down, pushed down all these policies. And I'm like, but I don't want my money going there.
That's right.
But it's a mandatory fee.
Now, in all fairness, like SGAs dole them out to organizations, and some of those organizations, like the Flag Football League, right? Yeah. You wouldn't care about the Flag Football League getting some money, right? But this is not. There's no Flag Football League in this. This is hardcore leftist, and like PBS is terrible, right? PBS, the news hour, it's just commie beat down every night. Their idea
All
of
right.
bringing on a conservative is David Brooks, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's like just like adding Michael Steele and all these guys on
Yeah.
there, right? So, all right, everybody. That's this is a wrap. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks for the comments, Bob. Appreciate you joining us. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. We will be off next week, so we'll be back here in 2 weeks, catching up on the news and seeing. Maybe we'll have the war in Ukraine solved by then. Who knows? All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. We'll see you again in 2 weeks.